One of the biggest mistakes gardeners make is assuming that raised beds automatically solve watering problems. I've seen it countless times. People build a beautiful raised bed, fill it with a rich-looking soil mix, and then wonder why their plants wilt within days of planting. The reality is that raised beds fundamentally change the way water behaves in soil, and ignoring that can lead to drought stress, nutrient deficiencies, and, well, frustrated gardeners. Before we get deep, if you want strategies that actually work to keep soil alive and productive, subscribe. This channel is about real-world, tested methods that produce results, not just theory. Raised beds dry out faster than most gardeners realize. One of the first things you notice when you move soil above ground is that it loses moisture far more quickly than in-ground beds. The sides and bottom are exposed to air, which increases evaporation. Even a bed as shallow as 6 inches can lose a significant amount of water within a single day during hot weather. I've measured this in my own 4 by 8 foot backyard beds. The top 2 inches can drop by 20 to 30% of available moisture in under 24 hours during peak summer. That's enough to stress plants and soil life, especially if you're relying on microbial activity to make nutrients available. You know, the common advice to just water more really isn't enough. If you overwater in response, you risk leaching nutrients and honestly encouraging root rot in heavier soils. The key here is understanding how the soil retains water in the first place, and then, manipulating its properties to hold what plants actually need. Not all raised bed soils are created equal. A simple mix of topsoil and compost might look fertile, but if the texture is off, it just won't hold water effectively. I've found that honestly the best approach is a combination of organic matter and mineral structure. For a standard 4 by 8 foot bed, I use a ratio of roughly 3 parts coarse topsoil, 2 parts compost and 1 part sand or fine gravel. The sand improves drainage, just enough to prevent pooling at the bottom, while the compost acts like a sponge that slowly releases water to roots. Over several seasons, this mix encourages a healthy balance of fungi and bacteria that further enhance moisture retention. Hydroponic soil-adjacent systems work on the same principle. In a coir or composted bark medium, I always mix in 10 to 15% perlite or vermiculite to prevent compacting while retaining some water. Too much coarse material dries the bed quickly. Too much fine material holds water but can suffocate roots. It's a balancing act that's crucial for serious gardeners. Mulching is more than a surface-level fix. It's essential for moisture management. One of the biggest mistakes I see is underestimating the power of mulch. Even a half-inch layer can make a noticeable difference in evaporation rates. In raised beds, I use 2 to 3 inches of straw, shredded leaves, or grass clippings to insulate the soil. This isn't just about keeping water in. It moderates temperature swings and reduces surface crusting, which otherwise prevents water from penetrating effectively. In one test bed, adding a 3-inch mulch layer reduced irrigation frequency by nearly 40% over a hot week without sacrificing growth. Be careful with nitrogen-rich mulches, though. Fresh grass clippings or green leaves can temporarily tie up nitrogen as they decompose. I offset this by adding small amounts of composted material or a light side dressing of balanced fertilizer. The goal is to maintain moisture without starving the plants. Raised beds allow you to control depth and shape, which directly affects moisture dynamics. Shallow beds will dry quickly and encourage surface rooting, which leaves plants vulnerable to drought. I've had the best results with beds at least 12 inches deep. This gives enough volume to retain water and encourages roots to grow deeper, where moisture is more stable. For even better performance, taper the sides slightly and mound the center. This creates a natural gradient that distributes water evenly while preventing pooling along the edges. In hydroponic soil systems, a similar principle applies. Using layered media with drainage at the bottom and water-retentive material at the top ensures that roots get steady moisture without sitting in waterlogged pockets. Even small adjustments to depth or layering can make a dramatic difference in plant health. The single most effective way to retain water isn't plastic liners or expensive gels, it's building living soil. Organic matter, whether compost, leaf mold, or aged manure, absorbs water like a sponge and slowly releases it as plants need it. I generally aim for a 30 to 40% organic matter content by volume in raised beds. This may seem high, but it's essential for creating a soil ecosystem that regulates moisture naturally. The microorganisms in rich organic soil also play a huge role. Bacteria, fungi, and earthworms improve soil structure over time, creating channels and aggregates that hold water more effectively. In beds where I've neglected organic matter, even frequent watering failed to produce consistent results. When I added a top dressing of compost and incorporated shredded cardboard strips, moisture levels stabilized and plant stress dropped noticeably within weeks. Even the best soil won't maintain consistent moisture without proper irrigation. I've tested everything from drip lines to hand watering, and for raised beds, slow, deep watering is almost always superior to frequent shallow applications. This encourages roots to seek moisture deeper in the bed rather than clustering near the surface. For a 4 by 8 foot bed, I typically run drip irrigation for about 20 to 30 minutes twice a week in midsummer, checking soil moisture at a 6-inch depth to fine-tune the timing. Overwatering or shallow watering leads to leaching or surface drying, which really reduces efficiency and stresses plants. Hydroponic soil-based systems need the same principle applied a bit differently. Even in a medium that holds water well, giving plants periodic wetting and partial drying cycles encourages stronger roots and more resilient microbial populations. Constant saturation is just as harmful as overdrying. Moisture retention isn't just about physical soil properties, it's about, maintaining a living system. Cover crops, especially legumes or buckwheat, add biomass, improve soil aggregation, and reduce evaporation by shading the soil. Even in winter, a thin cover crop layer protects the soil from harsh drying winds or freeze-thaw cycles. In beds where I've planted cover crops between growing seasons, moisture measurements remain higher throughout the early spring compared to bare soil beds, reducing the need for early irrigation. Rotating crops with different root structures also matters. Deep-rooted plants break up compacted areas and improve infiltration, while shallow-rooted crops maintain surface coverage. Alternating these types seasonally keeps the soil more porous and, better at holding water. The most important lesson is that consistent small interventions really do outperform drastic one-time fixes. Mulch regularly, monitor moisture, maintain organic matter, and honestly tweak irrigation based on real measurements rather than just assumptions. Even experienced gardeners often overlook minor changes like soil texture adjustments or layered mulch. But honestly, these have outsized effects on moisture retention and, overall plant health. If you found these strategies useful, subscribe to Husbandry. Sharing this video helps other gardeners understand how raised beds behave differently from in-ground plots and why managing water intelligently is key to long-term productivity. Raised beds are a tool, but understanding soil is the skill. At the end of the day, a raised bed is only as effective as your understanding of the soil it contains. Moisture retention isn't magic. It's a combination of soil structure, organic matter, bed design, irrigation, and observation. By applying these principles, you create a resilient system where roots, microbes, and water work together naturally. Plants will grow stronger, yields will improve, and your effort will translate into consistent results rather than constant firefighting. Focus on creating living soil, monitoring moisture, and adjusting small variables consistently. That's how raised beds reach their full potential. And that's the difference between a nice garden and a highly productive, sustainable system.